Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Becky Robinson, the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence, and we are so excited that you are going to invest some time learning with us today. I'm going to give a few moments for folks to come into the waiting room, but I would love to have you shout out in the chat where you're calling in from today. And I am calling in from my home office in Michigan. And I'm thrilled to introduce two of my colleagues to you today. I have Franchesca Conner and Laura Finch with me, two members of our PR team. And in a few moments, I will let them introduce themselves. But before I do that, just to let you know, we're going to do about 30 to 40 minutes of content today on PR and branding. And then at the end of this session, we will allow some time for Q&A. So we would welcome you at any point to put your questions into the chat and we will come back to them later in the session. At any point, you can feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat. And we will be putting this recording onto our company YouTube channel later today. So in the event that you have an author friend or a colleague that you would like to share this session with, we would invite you to do so. And again, I would love to have you say hello in the chat. I recognize a few names. I see that my friend Marla's here, my friend Rachel's here, my friend Ron Rubin is here. Ron, I'm just going to have to shout you out because you're here. Sydney's here. Janet's here. So I recognize many of your names. I'm glad you're here with us today. Definitely a friendly crowd. So I'm going to start by introducing Laura Finch to you. Laura is our new PR strategist at Weaving Influence. She has just returned to our company after a few years away. So Laura, I will let you introduce yourself, and then Franchesca, if you would like to introduce yourself, and then we do have a poll today that we'd love to get your feedback on. So Laura first.
Thanks, Becky. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Hi, Ron. So like Becky said, I used to be with Weaving Influence. My career has kind of meandered through politics and media in different ways. I'm also a freelance journalist. And I really love partnering with authors at this particular point in your life because you have so much wisdom to share. And typically the book marks a season when you're ready to share that wisdom. And I've always loved working with visionaries. So authors, legislators, pastors, business owners, I find I work really well with that kind of personality. It just gives me a lot of energy. I actually just ran a mayoral campaign in my town, not for myself, but we got someone elected who unseated an incumbent of many years. It was very exciting, highest voter turnout in a long time. So that's the energy I'm bringing to this work. And here's my colleague, Franchesca.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. I'm Franchesca Conner. I am a PR specialist here at Weaving Influence. I've been in the public relations, public affairs, communications space for over a decade now. And I've been with Weaving Influence this is going on my third year. So excited to be here, excited to talk about everything PR, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Franchesca. It's a thrill to have you with me today. So I am going to share a little bit about branding, and then I'm going to hand things over to my colleagues to talk about PR. So for authors, just a note that we do still have this book marketing accelerator course branding on these slides. We've decided as a team that we are going to do a bunch of free webinars throughout the rest of this year. If you go to our website, you might notice that the Book Marketing Accelerator course is going to disappear for various reasons, but we are still going to have these free sessions available so that we can share value with our authors and our wider community. So when you want to think about branding, branding can be confusing, but I like to make it as simple as possible. And the most true thing I can say about branding is the brand is you. So if you're an author or a thought leader who's wondering about, what is my brand, you don't have to look very far. Just think about, what is the value that you want to share? What are the unique qualities that you bring to your work? And your brand is really those things that make you different, that set you apart, things that people can count on you for. So when I think about myself as an author brand, part of my brand is like, I think part of my brand is what you see is what you get. You're just as likely to see me dressed up like I am today as you are to see me in my running clothes, or you're going to see me at home. You're going to see me with a cup of coffee. I try to be as like authentic and real as I can be. So when you're thinking about your author brand, there are a few steps you can think about. And one is defining your brand, but it's not defining your brand in the way of making something up. It's defining your brand in identifying what's already there. And it can be clarifying. It can be helpful to clarify, what is the unique value that I want to bring? What do I want to highlight about my brand? What is it that I want to make sure is memorable about my brand? Along the way, as we're looking to grow our thought leadership brands in the world, we may discover, who the people are who are drawn to us. We may discover the things about our way of speaking about our work that are particularly resonant. And then from there, we can decide in what way do I want to continue to reinforce my brand over time. So those are a few steps as you think about branding that might be helpful. And a few more notes about branding. It's really not at all about projecting an unrealistic ideal or creating a false impression or hiding your personality. And a shout out to Marla, who's on the call. Marla would say, like, that really what will help you when your branding is like to be weird, like to set yourself apart by what's unique about you. And that doesn't mean hiding anything. Instead, it means allowing your true self to shine through, bringing the best of who you are to online spaces. So you want to think a little bit about where does your brand live? And obviously your brand lives online in all sorts of ways, and it can be super helpful to take a look, to do an audit. Where are the various places online where your brand is showing up, and are you consistent across all of the channels? So if someone is looking to your online presence to understand a story about you, what's the story that they'll find when they Google you or when they go to your various online properties? So this is a snapshot of some of where you would find me online, and a cohesive colors and fonts can help bring a professional edge to your brand. Now, I will say one thing about photos that I believe to be very true, that it's helpful to keep your photos up to date. So these happen to be the author photos that I got taken in 2021, preparing for the release of my book in 2022 as a 53-year-old woman. I need to make sure that my photos actually reflect my aging. And so I'm going to have a new photo shoot this spring, this summer, soon, so that I can update these photos so that what people see on my website are what they get when they meet me in real life. And again, this is not about projecting some false ideal. I'm not trying to make myself like look younger than I actually am, or to appear, different than who I am in real life. So it is really important to think about how you're going to maintain that visual consistency across all of your channels, and to keep your online presence up to date, not only up to date with new information about the work that you're doing, but also up to date with, who you are in the world, so that you have a cohesive story that people can very quickly see the value that you have to offer them. So as you think about your brand, you want to think about your target audiences. Who do you want to reach? You want to think about what your core topics are. And that can change over time. You may have core topics that you want to speak to at one phase, and as your content adapts, you may create content on new topics. I have been thinking this week about starting a Substack newsletter, which would be mostly like for experimentation and learning. And so I can better advise our clients. And so I've been thinking about what are the core topics that I might want to use on my Substack that might be different than the core topics that go into my newsletter that we send out from Weaving Influence bi-weekly. And one of the things that you can do that I think is fun is to think about nouns that describe you and verbs that describe what you do. And sometimes creating what I do statements can help you clarify your brand and your brand promises. So for example, what I do, I support authors and thought leaders with book marketing strategy. I coach authors through the publishing process. Those would be a few what I do statements. What I do, I build a team of talented professionals to serve authors well in executing book launch strategies. So, you could think about that for yourself. And if you want to, go ahead and take a moment to jot down a what I do statement that might help bring some clarity to help you define your brand as you think about branding today. You always want to make sure that your brand aligns to your book and audiences. And what I've noticed in serving authors is that the more a book is aligned to the author's core work in the world, the more likely it is that that book will drive the results that authors want in their lives and businesses. So, I wrote a book called Reach. It's so closely aligned to the work that I do at Weaving Influence. And so as a result, I have seen that create results for me. That doesn't mean you can't write a book that's not related to your core brand promises. As an example, I'm working on a book right now called Beyond the Politics of Contempt. It's about how to create more positive relationships in divided times. That is not at all related to the work I do at Weaving Influence, but it also doesn't conflict with any of the brand that I hope to fuel in the world. So we're going to talk about PR, and I'm going to let my colleagues teach you. But before I do that, I want to stop for a moment and get some feedback on a poll. We'd love to have you be engaged with us today, and we are curious to hear what you think about podcasts. So, what is your experience with podcasts? And you can answer with more than one response if you'd like. Do you listen regularly? Do you listen occasionally? Do you host a podcast? Have you been a guest on podcasts? Would you like to be a guest on podcasts? Or do you have no interest in podcasts? And I will give you a few moments to answer this poll. We would love to get your feedback. And interesting to see those results. So I'm going to give that a few more moments so that more of you can respond. I know that Marla, my friend who's on this call, would like to be a guest on 50 podcasts during the year of her 50th birthday. So if there's anyone on the call who is a host, it doesn't seem that there is, Marla would make a terrific guest. All right, it looks like we have 100% participation with this poll, so I would love to show you the results. About 46% of you listen to podcasts regularly, 31% listen occasionally, and about 23% of you would like to be a guest on podcasts. Okay, so Laura and Franchesca, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I will get those slides for you. And I'll do my best to keep pace and make sure I move these forward when you need me to.
All right. Yes, there will be a recording of the webinar, right, Becky? Yes. Okay, so I just want to highlight again how important it is to do that branding work before you approach your PR work. You can always, reach out organically to people that you meet, but it helps so much to have some of those things defined. And this is the reason why it's more important than ever to break through the noise, drive your brand presence, and increase your book visibility. I know I don't have to tell all of you, but the internet has caused the most upheaval in the world of journalism. What was just a few big networks before now is like, hundreds and probably thousands of different sites and podcasts, all of which have audiences, which we'll talk about. But that's a lot of noise. It's a lot of noise for reporters as well as for audiences. So part of our role is to help you get the attention of a reporter who has a larger audience. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So yeah, this is an example of that. 11 stories a week. That's a lot. I've worked in TV, I've worked in radio, and I've worked in quick turnaround web news as well as print. And web news, which is much of what we pitch for our clients and probably where you would like to be showing up online, was probably the most stressful because it was the quickest turnaround and the quickest deadlines. So reaching one of these people when they're writing 11 stories a week is an art. It is an art form, and that's what we're going to talk about. Because each one of those stories probably is going to quote at least 2 or 3 people. So how do we break through the noise? One thing is to have online credibility, which Becky already discussed. Um, Beyond that, you really want to know what your goals are. So you want to define goals after you've defined your brand. And the reason we do brand first is because it will inform your goals. Are you looking to reach a certain segment of the market, a certain age group, just a certain demographic? Um, and even once you have those two things, it's really not static. The best way to get attention in the media is to be aware of what that poor journalist who's writing 11 stories a week is working on at any given moment. And that means being aware of the news cycle. So if a news event occurs that touches on your expertise in any way, that's your moment to do the most pitching that you can, because that's when the stories are being written, right? You could have great online credibility and you can have a great strategic approach and know what your goals are, but if you're not staying relevant, you're not going to break through as much. You can have online credibility and be really relevant, but if you're kind of scattershot and you don't have a framework in mind, you're also not going to be as effective. Let's move on. So these are from personal experience. These are some things that reporters are going to look for first. So if I get a pitch, say I'm working on a radio show, I get a pitch from someone who wants to be a guest. The first thing I'm going to do is Google them or follow a link to their website, check out who their publisher is. Do I know who their publisher is? Do I have any connections to them in any way? And then I'm going to look for formats. If I'm going to put you on the air, I need to hear you speak first, right? I'm either going to call you on the phone or I'm going to try to find a snippet of you online to watch or listen to. For print and web, really the most you might get is a quick reference to your credentials. So you're really going to want to make sure those are clear. And yeah, as we said before, when you have a consistently updated presence on social media, that also tells me as a reporter that this is someone with credibility. This is someone who can speak to current issues. Um, they don't have an out-of-date photo, like Becky said. They're kind of in the news cycle, and they are going to be a credible source for what I'm writing about. Yeah, like I said, the best time to pitch your message is immediately after a related news event. Um, Now you can tie your message into many different angles, and that's part of what we do at Weaving Influence. There might not always be a breaking news related to your message, but you can always tweak it to appeal to that reporter. It's so important, by the way, to read what a reporter has been writing about or to try to listen to at least one show before you pitch them, because that is really what's going to make you stand out. Many, many, many pitches come through that are clearly not targeted, and those immediately get trashed. Yeah, you're going to want to customize your pitch. Why are you a good fit for this show and at this time, like we talked about before? Um, Podcasts, we'll speak about in a moment again, but podcasts are a great way to start because they are a niche audience and you're going to reach people immediately that are interested in your topic. But there's many different kinds of media that you can pitch, including your local TV station. They might love to know about a local author with a new book coming out. Um, Contributed articles. So this can be a funny thing because when you offer up a contributed article, you've done the work and you're not going to have somebody calling you to ask you questions about your subject. It's on you to put the words down, and then you might be put into a long waiting list, to be honest. Your piece might not be posted for a long time. Um, Again, that goes back to the busyness of journalists, but it really means a lot for a future journalist to find online that you've already authored something for Psychology Today or for Forbes or even a guest post on a friend's blog that shows that you have a presence and that you're someone with credibility. Um, you're also going to need to wait a long time sometimes for pitching. You might be pitching for weeks before you get a really good hit, and that's with consistent pitching. So for that reason, you want to always respond immediately to a media inquiry. I would say within 24 hours or even sooner if possible, because that person might be on a deadline. They might have reached out to three people at once to comment on something. And if they don't hear from you first, you might not make it into the story. Just be really easy to work with. Show up, check your time zones, make sure your audio is working ahead of time. Do a test run with a friend to make sure that your new microphone sounds okay. Um, and please always use short answers. Okay. So do you want to take it from here, Franchesca, or are you the next one?
Yeah, I'll take it the next slide. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. So these are some reasons that pitches get rejected. So again, from personal experience, both as a journalist and then on the other side, pitching authors like you. Um, if it doesn't really connect to the news or even something I'm interested in, it's going to get ignored. If people call me Lauren, to be honest, that's really annoying. Like my name is pretty obvious, and it should be. You can use my real name. Um, so this is interesting. Sometimes it's a timing thing, right? Maybe you sent it just too soon or just too late. So you want to follow up on pitches. If you pitch someone 1 week and you haven't heard back, you can follow up again. That's not being pushy. It's actually really kind because it helps to show me, the journalist, that you are a real person. You're not spamming a list of hundreds of people, that you actually really do care about this one show. In fact, sometimes I love it when someone follows up with more ideas for an angle because maybe I saw the first email, but I wasn't quite sure if it was a fit for our show. And now they've written me back with even more ideas, and I'm like, oh, that one will work. So always follow up. But we like to say maybe one follow-up. One follow-up is good. And if you still haven't heard back, then that's a no. Yeah, the rest of this is kind of self-explanatory. All right. And now I'm going to hand it off to Franchesca, who frankly is an expert on pitching. She spends a lot of time pitching for both Weaving Influence and other organizations. So she's going to take it away.
Thanks, Laura. So yeah, as Laura spoke about earlier, you really want to post all your media wins to their website. We're going to talk about this in the next few slides when we're talking about the different approaches that you can take to when it comes to media relations and the tiered media approach. But yeah, you want to make sure that all your media wins are on the website so that way reporters can look and see that you have done speaking engagements before. And that way we can, elevate you and make sure that we get other other kinds of media or pitch other media in the future. And then also this last bullet point when it comes to, staying in touch with the reporter. I don't know how many times I've had clients who say, like, oh, this I went on this podcast and I was able to get another podcast because, they have connections or friends from that are hosts and other in other areas or other, they have other audiences. So that's a huge one. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the media relations phased approach, so we have plan, develop, execute, and optimize. When we're at the planning stage, that's when we're doing any kind of like foundational, that's the true, like what's going to happen, or I guess how we're going to implement your entire PR campaign, right? So the media strategy is super crucial. It covers your mission statement, brand positioning, book overview, key messages, and credentials. That's all going to be in your foundational media strategy. From there, we go on and create any kind of additional content. So most likely a press kit to be able to engage and send out to all the different media contacts. Depending on where or what your book is about or who wrote your book, you might have a company fact sheet, depending, maybe you have like C-suite execs that wrote a book. So we might do a fact sheet, but mostly we'll have like a shortened bio. So maybe we'll create like, a short bio or long bio. If we're talking about like a contributed article who they want like a longer, in-depth biography of who you're about after you've written this op-ed or contributed article. So that's the develop stage. Then we go on to the execution phase where we really do some aggressive media outreach pitching. We curate a huge list of different podcasters, online print media outlets. And then we go on to the optimize phase, which is, refining the pitches, which we'll probably do in the execution phases, refining the pitch. But that's when, we'll be able to execute the launch press release on your launch day. So, we adjust the pitches depending on what Laura has kind of talked about earlier was, making sure that you're newsworthy, relevant, and understanding the different beats of reporters and tying it to your book or your brand to make sure that, what we're pitching is something that they'll actually cover. Next slide, please. So the tiered media pitching approach, this is a great pyramid. We're really, like when you're starting off, you really want to start off at the bottom. So we're doing foundational outreach. So that's, like podcasts, um, that, you want to target the top 10% or that are ranked top 10%. So those are kind of like your low-hanging fruit. Starting from the bottom, foundational outreach, going on to tier two, which is like specialized trade, print, and online media, like a little more broader audience. Going on to tier three, you have even more broad audience and business press. And then you can, hopefully get to the top tier press, which is New York Times, Wall Street Journal, like, CNN, Fox, those kinds of publications and outlets. But you really want to start off in the bottom or the bottom, the base of this pyramid, to be able to move up. So that way like I said before, when reporters are looking at your website, when reporters are looking at potentially interviewing you, or podcasters are potentially interviewing you, they want to see that you have something like some kind of speaking opportunities in the past that they can relate to, or they know maybe the questions that they would ask you during an interview um, that will resonate with their audience and what they want to write about. Next slide, please. Okay. So the popularity of podcasts, we had that poll, and 78% of Americans are aware of podcasting, 57% Americans have listened to podcasts, and 11% of Americans listen to podcasts daily. So, that kind of gives you an understanding of podcasts are growing and they're not going away. We see the amount of podcasts like, yearly, the exponentially, like the grow rate of podcasts is pretty hefty, and these are the types of outlets that we really want to um, go after to be able to expand your reach and yeah, give you give you more opportunities to publicize your book. And then I'll just hand it over to Becky for questions.
I am back. I had to turn my camera off. I don't know if you guys saw my dog. That was a little nutty. We would love to hear your questions about branding or about PR, and you can put those in the chat, and my colleagues and I will be happy to answer them. And if you have any comments about your own experience with PR, we'd be happy to hear those as well. One of the things that I'll say about podcasts, and clients will ask this frequently, I'm curious, Franchesca and Laura, what you might think about this. Should I say yes to all the podcasts that come my way? And I would say tentatively that I try to say yes to almost every single opportunity that I have to talk about my book on a podcast. There are times that I get pitches and I go to check out the show and it's just not a fit. And so of course there's a time and a place to say no to some opportunities that may come your way. But, most of us who are trying hard to break through the noise, any opportunity that we get is a good opportunity. And just to reference this, I mentioned earlier that I'm working on this book called Beyond the Politics of Contempt. I have two co-authors. Last week, my two co-authors had a chance to speak at an event. It was a very relevant event. And now this is never an event that they would have said no to. It was an easy yes. But what I wanted to talk about is a little bit the results. So they participated in this live event. They had a chance to talk about the book. Because this book is self-published, it's not available for pre-order anywhere. It doesn't have any online place that we could send people, except that my co-authors and I have a Substack. What we have seen is this amazing growth to the Substack from that one event. So there were 600 or 700 people at this event. We had about 130 subscribers before the event. Now, after the event, we have over 600 subscribers. And it's just crazy. We've been adding more every day. So anytime you have an opportunity to be in front of a relevant audience, you definitely want a place to send them so they can stay connected to you. But you also want to say yes to that opportunity because it's that chance to be with people either live or on a podcast that helps to expand your message. So Maria says, if I've only been on a podcast once a few years back and have no media, how do I start a media kit?
I can jump in on this. So I think that understanding that, or if you have a website like that, you can start filling any kind of media hits. You can just add your website to the media kit, but like what I would recommend is just putting all the different elements in your media kit first and you don't have to put in like your media section of your website in there. You can just put your website. But it's really just like the foundation or the overview of your media strategy. So you want to put that in your media kit so that way you can start pushing that out to different media outlets to gain some traction for your PR efforts.
So maybe it would be helpful to talk about what the elements of a media kit are.
Yep, I have it pulled up right over here. And these are all things that are super helpful to have for a busy producer, because that person might not just be producing a show. They might also be doing the social media for the show, because again, they're very busy. Roles have collapsed. So having all these things sent to them at one time is super helpful. Okay, so in our Weaving Influence press kits, here's what we have. We have an image of the book. This you would get from your publisher. We have a bio. So that's always, you always want to be sending out a bio. And like Franchesca said, you can have a long form, you can have a short form, but that's number one. I would say number one and number two are your bio and your headshot. Those are going to be the most requested. The other images, like the book image, is a plus, but not a must-have. In addition, you can include as much ancillary content as you want to, a book summary. You probably don't want this to be more than like 4 pages, but you could have a book summary. You could have suggested questions. Speaking of busy reporters, sometimes they need a little help in that area. So suggested questions are great so that they understand right off the bat, here are the things you can speak to. Um, I have a friend who's worked in radio a long time, and he talks about working on shows that had like 9 guests a week. That's a lot of guests to be prepping questions for, and they're not reading every single one of those books. Um, they don't have the time. So for you to provide those summaries will really help the host to have a handle on what's going on. I also want to mention with regards to the question that came in, I always love it when a guest has clearly listened to the show before. Even just one episode will really help you clue in. I worked on a podcast where we asked the same 5 questions, I think, at the end of every single show. And it was shocking how many people came on the podcast and were completely surprised by these questions. Like, oh, I've never thought about that before. If you had listened to even one episode, you would have known that those were coming rapid fire at the end of our show. So, as many, accept as many invitations as you can reasonably like prepare for.
So Maria, I hope that answered your question about the media kit. You don't have to have media already
Yes, true.
to create a media kit.
Yeah.
Francesca, you were talking about a story that you had about how long it can take to create results on PR. We talked about that when we were prepping. Do you want to share that story?
Yeah, so I had what was it? About a year and a half ago, we had a client and I pitched her for a podcast and I didn't receive an answer or a response until it was about like six months later after I had we had basically wrapped up her work and of course we sent it the win to her, but that's just how long it takes. And it's a testament to how we have to understand that these podcasters, sometimes they have full-time jobs. Like a lot of them have full-time jobs, and this is a part-time thing or side gig that they participate in. And that's, sometimes it's their passion on the side that they like to be a host on these podcasts. So it takes a while. People will get to you when they get to you, basically.
And I would say also, like, I host a podcast, you guys might know. I think we're about 150 episodes in, so it's not a new thing. We've been producing the Book Marketing Action podcast for 5 years. Maybe this is the fifth or the sixth, 20, what, anyway. At any rate, we plan our seasons out way in advance. And because of that, we might have someone pitch me like today, and we've already filled up the entire year, 2025. All of our guests are already chosen, all of our guests are already slotted in and scheduled. Now, to be clear, we only do about like this year, we're only doing like 10 to 12 episodes. So if there's a show you really want to be on, and if you have a book coming out later, it's very helpful to get your pitches in early in hopes that you can get coverage for your book around when the book is coming out. So I always try to be flexible, especially if a friend comes to me and has a valuable message to share on the show, and if they have a new book coming out. So for example, there's a guy in publishing that I deeply admire named Todd Satterston. And I don't even know, he's been a guest on my show before. I wasn't necessarily even planning to have him on the show this season, but then he let me know that he had a book coming out in October. And so we moved things around and slotted him into October. But the only reason I could do that is because I found out about it like in February. Same with Jane Friedman, who's another publishing professional that I admire. Her latest book just came out, I think, last week. And she told me about it last summer. And so I had it on my radar. So if you have friends who are podcast hosts and you have a book coming out much later, you can go to them early and say, "Hey, I'm going to release my new book in the summer of 2025. I want to be on your show," and just get on their radar early. Not everyone probably schedules out a year in advance like we do, but you don't want to miss that opportunity. And just a side note, when that new Jane Friedman show comes out, and I can't remember the date, I think it might be in May, she tells a great story about, as a very well-known thought leader in publishing, what she went through in pitching herself and her book. So everyone will have to listen to that episode. It's really powerful. So we are open for a few more questions if any of you have any. It's okay if you don't. Laura, do you have any other experiences in producing podcasts that may be of help to our attendees today?
You know, I am curious how attendees are feeling about pitching themselves because I know a lot of people um, have hangups about it. They feel like it's self-promotion, and I like something that Becky is often saying that it's really not self-promotion, it's message promotion, that you have a specific message. And yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome is real. It happens to everybody. Um, I have a close friend who's a pastor. She speaks in front of audiences all the time, and she still has a hard time asking for an interview about her book. Um, so it happens to everyone. Um, okay, here's a question. If a book coming out next year is available for pre-order now, this feels like it's going to be a Becky answer. What are your recommendations for timing any promotions around the pre-order? Is it good to promote pre-ordering a book anytime, or is it better to push it closer to the pub date? Great question.
So, Doug, thank you for the question and congratulations on your book. And I do have some thoughts about this. So, you must be traditionally published because typically it's the traditionally published books that are set up for pre-order way in advance. My rule of thumb on this is that as soon as you find out it's available for pre-order, it doesn't hurt to start to let people know, to fold it into your social profiles, like, new book coming summer 2026 or whatever it is that you want to put on your profiles, to kind of like soft let people know about a pre-order. In my experience and at Weaving Influence, we've supported authors through about 250 launch campaigns. We've supported over 500 authors, so we've seen a lot. The behavior that I recognize is that most people do not want to pre-order a book many months in advance, because when you place the order, you pay for the order. And, I don't need to pay for a book in April that's not coming out until January. And so for more heavy pre-order campaigns for one at a time sales, I generally recommend only starting those bigger calls to action or reminders to people about 2 to 3 months before the book is going to come out. Now, that said, if you are a business book author and you are interested in accumulating bulk orders for your book, maybe you're trying to reach a bestseller list like the USA Today bestseller list or the Publishers Weekly bestseller list. Generally, that requires that you amass about 5 to 12,000. If you're thinking about the New York Times list, you need to get about 5,000 to 12,000 pre-orders. So if you're in that camp, Doug, what I recommend then is that you start the bulk pre-order campaign sooner than the individual pre-order campaign. I'll tell you a little bit about a friend, author, Allison Fregale. So Allison and I worked together on some strategy. She was published by one of the big 5 publishers. She had really big goals for her book. And she also was someone who did a lot of speaking. So as soon as your book is available for pre-order, if you're someone who's speaking, what you can do is try to fold the purchase of a lot of your books into those speaking contracts. So for example, your book is coming out in March of 2026, it's May of 2025, you get asked to speak in September, and you could negotiate as part of your fee that organization would buy X number of copies of your book, or you could do some kind of exchange. Or you could apply the money that you're making at that speaking engagement to purchase books and like gift them as part of that endeavor. So as it relates to that type of campaign, I would start sooner because it is so difficult to amass large quantities of those bulk pre-orders. As it was for Allison, she had about 12,500 or something like that pre-orders, which fold into launch week. She did make the USA Today bestseller list. She did make the Publishers Weekly bestseller list. She did not make the New York Times bestseller list, even though she sold enough books to make the New York Times list. And the reason is because the New York Times list is curated and they hand select the books that go on the list. It's not only related to the number of sales. So Doug, I hope that answers your question as it relates to when do you start for pre-order outreach. I know it was a much bigger answer than the question that you asked. So just as a quick recap, as soon as you know your book is available for pre-order, you can do kind of like a soft, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. My book's available for pre-order. Not really necessarily expecting people to pre-order so early. And you could even say that, like, I know no one wants to buy a book in April that's not coming out until January, but here it is. Here's my book. people will share that excitement. Then, if you're someone who speaks or consults or trains, fold bulk pre-orders into your ongoing consulting engagements as soon as you can, so that you have all those pre-orders for the week one, so you can make a bestseller list. And then for individual pre-orders, just to your network or email list, wait until about 2 to 3 months before the publication date. That is what it is. Okay, let's see. So I see a
So
question.
Francesca and I can take the next questions about podcasts.
Sure. So this
Um,
question came from Hillary. Is there a way of getting a sense of the size of a podcast? Like, how do you know if anyone actually listens to a particular podcast?
Yeah, so great question. So here at Weaving Influence, we actually use several tools to be able to determine which podcasts are top ranked. The one tool that we use the most is Listen Notes. But there are also other tools like Podseeker and Podmatch to try to get a sense of, well, Podseeker and Listen Notes and Podseeker, you can find out where these podcasts are ranked, and that's when I was mentioning earlier that we try to focus on the top 10%. And then I also saw, Maria, your note about how to find podcasts that matches your content or what you want to talk about. So when you're looking or using these tools, you can just look up, like, if you're, say your book is all about business leadership. You can just like look up, like, hashtag business leadership on these tools, and it'll like tell you, this is ranked top 5% out of 3.1 million podcasts, or top 10% or top 2%. And that's where you can really determine, do I want to pitch this person or do I not? And then, you can always look up on Google too. I do that sometimes. Google just, like, the top ranked business leadership podcasts. And but these tools really do help, the PR tools that we have. And also we have another tool that we use called Muckrack, and it does the same thing for us. Is, we look up um different, depending on what your brand is. Say you're a leader in the HR field, and I look up like HR podcasts on Muckrack, and that'll give you like a list of different podcasts that are out there that will match what you're trying to convey.
All right, I
just
see a
a
question
couple,
from Sandra Taylor, and Laura, I'll ask you this question, but I just want to say hi, Sandra. It's been a few years. I hope you're well. So nice to see you.
yay. Yeah, so Sandra had asked about follow-ups to podcasts since it does take a long time. I'd say yes, do follow up. Just be aware that podcasts, as we said, often have that longer lead time, as opposed to like someone writing for Newsweek who might have a deadline tomorrow at 5. So just being aware of the different timelines of people that you're pitching. I also would not recommend that you need to listen to an entire episode just to make a pitch. Certainly it would help, like for example, if you're a big fan of a podcast and you know the topics that they talk about and you can refer to those in your pitch, that's a big win, because now the producer or the host knows that you are a listener and you understand their topics and you can fit them into your own message. So that's always a win. But I would say it's especially important to listen all the way through if you're scheduled to be a guest on the podcast. That's just like a really courteous thing to do. But you can pitch any podcast anytime. That is totally fine. And if you've listened to it, that's a bonus.
I will add to, Laura, I've seen some podcasters or hosts ask specifically, hey, can you list at least one episode before our interview starts? So yeah.
For sure. And as a host, I would say that I can tell when someone fakes that they've listened, because I will have pitches come through and they'll reference like, oh, your conversation, blah, blah, blah. But once you get to the rest of the pitch, it's obvious that they are just doing that like in a performative way, that they didn't actually listen or they're not actually a fan. Um,
Pitching is
And
almost
I do.
a mindset. It's like everything you listen to. I'll be in the car listening to NPR and I'm like, oh, this show would be so great with this one client that we have. Like once you start doing it, you'll start to see opportunities everywhere, and then it can kind of become a part of your routine. It doesn't have to be like a big long list that I have to like plow through this. Like just keep doing it throughout your launch process.
Yeah, and another tip about finding shows to be on for those of you who are using social media channels, quite often what will happen for me is I'm scrolling through like Instagram or I'm scrolling through LinkedIn and I'll see a colleague or a friend and they've been on a show. And that can be an indication of like, oh, well, like, Jane Friedman was on this podcast. Would this be a good podcast for me to be on? So if you can take a look at colleagues of yours and see where they're being featured, that can become your pitch list. And another tip would be if you have a colleague who has a media page where they list all their appearances, that can become your list. Um, Now, not everyone posts those, in an easy to get format. And obviously, if you don't have a tool like Listen Notes or Muckrack, which are both paid tools, you may not be able to access email addresses. It can take a little bit of hunting. So we may have time for one more question. I'm going to watch the chat. But I do want to make sure that all of you know about Weaving Influence. I know many of you are like friends and you've been around a while. So just a few things about Weaving Influence for you. We are a full service marketing and PR agency for thought leaders and authors. We have been working primarily with nonfiction authors since I founded the company in 2012. We have supported authors on more than 250 book launches with more than 200 webinar and virtual launch events. We have a team of 20 plus experts who are dedicated to our client success, including Laura and Franchesca, another PR team member named Trinae. We are you can sort of see this picture that's in the background. Not all these people are still here, but most of them are. Our team has been working together for a long time to ensure that you create momentum through the launch of your book. We have several areas of expertise in addition to media relations and podcasts. We work on Amazon book review campaigns and online ads. We work on LinkedIn and other social media marketing and advertising. We help you mobilize your network to support your launch, including creating unique and creative influencer boxes on campaigns. We do website design and development, graphic design, virtual events, email marketing, and content marketing. In some cases, we work with authors on Speakers Bureau, identifying events that may be a good fit for your book and pitching you for them. And we also work on additional online paid thought leadership opportunities. So anything that you can dream up to market or advance your book, we can help you with. Something else that's not here is we work with authors on book awards and book reviews as well. So if you're interested in learning more, you can always email me. I'm Becky@weavinginfluence.com. We will be sending a follow-up email from today's session. And again, this session will show up on our YouTube channel. And for any of you who may have participated in events earlier this year where we said the event was only available live and not as a recording, we're actually going to be putting those recordings on our YouTube channel as well. So if you missed those, we had one on book marketing strategy. We had one on publishing choices, I believe, and then this one on PR and branding. I think that in May, we're going to talk about author websites, and then we have some other topics coming later this year. So I want to give a very big thank you to Laura and Franchesca for joining me for today's session. And in some of our upcoming sessions, you'll have a chance to meet some of the other professionals at Weaving Influence. One thing I want to encourage you to do is to think about any action steps you can take as a result of today's show. It's not a show. I'm like in my podcast mindset. This is not a show. It is a webinar. Sorry about that. But think about what you can take action on that you've heard today. Maybe you want to be a bit more authentic with your brand and show up as your unique and weird and wonderful self. Or maybe you want to think about some ways that you can use PR to expand awareness of your book. Whatever it is, I hope that you'll take some meaningful next steps to share your valuable work with the world. Thank you so much for being with us.